Congressman, thank you very much for talking to the Voice of America. Over the last few days, Iran has seen street protests, which started over gasoline price hikes, but then went beyond that. Also some casualties. What's your reaction to that?
We know that there are millions of Iranians who want to take control of their destiny. They want a free, stable, democratic Iran. They have been thinking about it for decades. They see an opportunity for a better future for their people, and they know that the regime that's in power right now is not a regime that's delivering that. So you see people who want to take control of their destiny. They have a dream for their country, for their future, for their families. And it's something that all around the world, we see it here at home when people rise up and want to pursue something that will provide a better future for that next generation. It's something as Americans that we have an affinity towards, people who want freedom.
The Iranian government went as far as executing one of the worst breakdown of the internet in the last years. And apparently US sanctions are biting hard on the Iranian economy, and people's discontent is putting pressure on the government. Do you see any chance for the Iranian leadership to restart talks with the US?
It's up to Iran what kind of a future they want. The sanctions are working, and you have other countries around the world, when faced with the decision of whether or not a company is going to do business with the U.S. economy or do business with the Iranian economy, they'll choose the U.S. economy. And that is helping to build some more momentum in some of these other countries. It's up to that regime that's there right now. They are the world's largest state sponsor of terror. The trajectory that they're on right now is one that is not in the best interest of their own people. It's one that's destabilizing the Middle East. It's one that's harmful for stability all around the world. If they want to talk about a better future, I think that the rest of the world is waiting.
You are one of the representatives, and together with some senators, who are co-sponsoring a bill to end U.S. waivers for civilian nuclear projects in Iran. This provision was included in the JCPOA, and the Trump administration has basically kept these waivers in place. Why do you deem it so important to end these waivers?
Well, I have a few colleagues, especially who feel very strongly in this particular case to ensure that the goals are being met when a waiver is given for a particular purpose, and then that purpose is not being met.
Are you concerned that these waivers basically give more time and more opportunity to the Iranians to further their nuclear program?
Well, this administration has been very strong as it relates to Iran, and I believe that they'll just continue to pursue that policy of finding new ways to apply maximum pressure to ensure that we're protecting America's national security, that we're standing strong with our allies. This could possibly be the next issue that gets discussed. It's a conversation that I welcome having more with the administration. I'll just say that a few of my colleagues feel very strongly about those waivers in particular, and the fact that Iran's not doing their part of what they should be committing to in order to have those waivers.
As we know, Democrats and Republicans are heading off to elections next year. Do you think that there is concern among Republicans, especially, that a Democratic queen might change course on Iran, and so it's better to do as much as possible before that happens?
Well, we can't go backwards. What we saw in 2015 with the negotiations of the JCPOA, red lines being crossed, fatal flaws in the nuclear deal for some of the clauses, the agreements, the compromises of what was in it, as well as some of the issues that were left unaddressed, the leverage that brought the Iranians to the table. They wanted the sanctions relief. Once you give them that sanctions relief, there's no leverage yet to deal with all of Iran's other bad activities. But with the sunset clauses in the JCPOA, with the flaws in the verification regime inside the JCPOA, the agreement that was entered into in 2015 was highly problematic. And I wouldn't want to see a new administration come in wanting to go backwards, negotiating from positions of weakness, and allowing Iran to roll us. Once again, we are the United States of America. In my opinion, this is the greatest country in the world. And I see, as you pointed out, the people who protest inside of Iran, who believe in a better future for their country. And I think that really the future trajectory of our relationship, of our policies, of their policies, should be about what's best in the interests of our nations, of stabilizing the Middle East, of growing and protecting and strengthening the world. So it's a different direction that Iran has to go. And I believe it would be a bad idea for us to look at the Obama administration and taking our clues from them as to writing the playbook of where America's foreign policy should go. I think that's very dangerous.
Talking about American foreign policy, an investigation by the New York Times and The Intercept just enlightened years and years of Iranian operations, political and intelligence operations inside Iraq in order to keep Iraq under control, at least in the sphere of influence of Iran, and this at the great cost for the US, and especially after the US started this disengagement from Iraq. What do you make of that?
We're seeing a growing influence over the course of the last several years, where Iran has really gotten a foothold into significant power inside of Iraqi government, amongst the Iraqi populace, amongst elements of law enforcement and the military, and that is of great concern, obviously. The Iraqi people have sacrificed a lot, and they want a better future for their country. And as far as sovereignty and independence and prosperity and all of the opportunity that presents Iraqis right now, that path is not one that is going to go through Tehran. It's not one that is going to rely on IRGC support. It's one that's not going to defer to the Ayatollah and others leading the government in Iran. I think it would be in Iraq's best interest to take maximum control over their own destiny and not allow Iran to have such a strong influence over their policies.
Let me ask you the same about Syria. There's been this disengagement of the US from Syria, and the same might be happening, and Iran might embolden its action and also be strengthened in its action in the area, and it's a very crucial area because it's even closer to Mediterranean. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, for one, earlier when I was talking about red lines being crossed during the negotiation of the JCPOA, the same issue in a different way manifested itself in Syria. The last administration set red lines on Assad's use of chemical weapons, for example, and as those red lines got crossed, there were no consequences. Right now, we're in a position in Syria where Russia has more influence than they've ever had before. Iran has more influence than this entire time that we've been talking about Syria here recently, and Turkey has had increased influence within Syria. So it's a complicated issue in Syria, and it's one that I believe that we need to approach in a way that doesn't result in the United States having to be there even more so in the future, to have to expend lives and limbs and financial costs 5, 10, 15 years down the road because we're not making the best decisions in the months and the years that are ahead. I'm pleased that we're not seeing the worst case scenario play out with some of the developments of a few weeks back. There was a fear that Erdogan was just going to go into northern Syria and just wipe out Kurds, maybe tens of thousands of Kurds, maybe do once again really bad things to innocent women and children. And fortunately, through a complex set of events from multiple countries and a lot of engagement, including Congress and the White House, we got to the point where we're not seeing that worst case scenario play out, but we have to be vigilant and strong. We can't disengage in a way where you assume that a vacuum is just going to be filled by the good guys. As a matter of fact, in that region of the world, that vacuum gets filled by the aggressors. And the United States, it's in our best national security interests, not just to see a more stable Middle East, but most specifically, we've expended a lot to defeat ISIS and to ensure that their caliphate is eliminated. And so we have to be smart in how we approach it. And it's bilateral, multilateral diplomacy, and it's about having a strong presence. And it's about the State Department, it's about the Defense Department, and the policy that comes from the White House and Congress in the months and the years that are ahead to make sure that we don't put ourselves in that position where, say, 7 years from now, we're talking about sending 20 or 50 or 100,000 troops, United States service members, into harm's way in a conflict that's far worse than what we're facing right now.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.